Okay, so good afternoon. It's been a great day so far, and it's not over yet. Thank you for joining us for the final session of today's Indigenous Alumni Living Library. My name is Ruth Shedd. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Communications for the Office of the Vice President Indigenous here at the University of Manitoba. Throughout the day, we've been joined by prominent Indigenous alumni who've taken on the role of books. But these aren't ordinary books. These are books you can interact with, you can ask questions to, and hear the tone of what they're sharing, and so much more. I'm super excited for our next book, who I recently met, and I know that you'll learn from her stories, experiences, and perspectives. And she's already had a big day today, and I just can't wait to hear more. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're Zooming from Treaty 1 and the homeland of the Métis Nation. The water that we drink here in Winnipeg comes from Shoal Lake 40, and as we were reminded in our last session, that our hydro comes from Treaty 5. I recognize and commit to reconnecting with the land and water in meaningful ways and to be part of our collective responsibility to protect them. So logistics, we're not on Facebook, so if you have a question in Zoom, please leave it in the chat and our host will pass it on to the book. I think we're a small enough group that you can also raise your hand and we can just call on you to ask your question if you prefer to ask it orally. In the meantime, just make sure that you stay on mute so that we're not hearing dogs barking and sirens going by. I know I have a lot of fire trucks go down my street. So today we've invited students who are currently studying in the faculties that the books graduated from to be our hosts. So Jacqueline Pelland, a Métis student in her second year of study at Robson Hall, Faculty of Law, will introduce our next book. I'll pass it over to you, Jacqueline.
Merci Ruth. Tanché tout le monde. Jacqueline Pelland, Indigenous Alumni. My name is Jacqueline Pelland, and as you now know, I'm in my second year of law. I'm super excited for today. I get to introduce someone who I deeply admire and respect and who has motivated me to stick out law school as far as I have. And her name is Raven-Dominique Gobeil. And Raven is a proud Anishinaabe and Métis woman who is also a member of Poplar River First Nation with Métis roots in southeastern Manitoba. So Raven actually holds 2 degrees from the U of M because she's amazing like that, a Bachelor of Arts in Native Studies and Labor Studies, and a Juris Doctor from the Faculty of Law, and she was very recently called to the bar in June 2020. She's now an associate at Cochrane Saxberg Law Firm. So welcome, Raven. Merci, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, Jacqueline, thank you. I'm just gonna call you Jack. That's what I call you, like,
go for it.
Outside of professionalism. Thank you for your kind words. That's you inspire me so much with the work you do, so I'm glad that it's a mutual inspiration.
You're so kind, thank you. So I'm gonna start off with a question that I have in front of me. And that is, tell us who you are and where you come from.
Okay, so as you mentioned, my name is Raven-Dominique Gobeil. My parents gave me 2 first names because they wanted to reflect kind of both cultures. Dominique is very traditionally a French name, so honoring that Métis roots. And then Raven is Indigenous, and they named me, actually they named me Raven after my dad had an addiction. And when he went to rehab, the addictions counselor name was Raven, and that was his way of paying, I guess, homage to her. Otherwise, my name would have been Alexandra. So I'm glad he did that. Nothing wrong with Alex, but I think Raven-Dominique is cooler. My status comes from Poplar River First Nation up in Treaty 5, where we all get our hydro from. And then my Métis roots come from southeastern Manitoba, out near Buffalo Point. That's where my dad's family was from. If you go back further, technically it's St. Anne's, Manitoba. And if you go back even further than that, it's technically the Red River Settlement. And if you keep going back, eventually you end up in France. So I live in Winnipeg. I've grown up in Winnipeg. I call Winnipeg like my work home because I think I only live here because I work here. I definitely prefer to be outdoors, to be hiking, attempting to live off the land. I don't think I would actually be successful if I ever had to. Just being outdoors, I prefer, fresh air, less people, kind of having my own thoughts. So I live in Winnipeg, but that's only because I have to work. And I have to work because I like working. It's not like a need. I just enjoy what I do.
That's awesome. It's really good to enjoy what you do. So I guess my next question is, why did you decide to go to university? What prompted you to take this path?
What prompted me to go to university? I guess I just wasn't ready to join the workforce forever.
Totally
when
fair.
I graduated high school, I just turned 18. I wasn't the worst 18-year-old, but I definitely wasn't the ideal 18-year-old. So I decided to go to university so I wouldn't have to work full-time, because I was living with my dad at the time, and he had a rule that if you weren't going to school, you were going to be working full-time. And I didn't like the idea of working full-time, so I went to school full-time instead.
I mean, yeah, you do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah. So, and that led me to a BA, and then led me to a JD. And now I have a job as a lawyer. So that's pretty cool.
Was there anything specific that made you decide you wanted to go into law? Because it's a pretty specialized area.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I work in the child protection branch or area at Cochrane-Saxburg. So we represent agencies. When I articled, so for those of you who don't know what articling is, it's kind of like the best equivalent is like a medical residency, where you work crazy long hours and you get like very little pay, but you get a lot of reward in experience and opportunities. So I articled defense side with Legal Aid Manitoba, and then when that was done, I moved here. But the reason why I chose to go into the area of law, like this area of law, child protection, was just because my family's own experience with the child welfare system. I didn't think it was an okay experience, but there was definitely times where I'm like, that's not okay, that shouldn't be happening. I don't agree with this. So I was one of those people who went to law school to try and change a specific area. And I don't have any regrets. I sincerely love the work I do. I think as an Indigenous person, it's very important to be working in this area, because I think in Manitoba, it's something like 90% of the kids in CFS are of Indigenous heritage. So I genuinely believe I have the power to make a difference doing with my law degree.
Thanks, that's awesome. And so you're here obviously answering all these questions.
Yes.
About law. So I think Karen actually just asked a question. So what is a typical workday like for you, and how long is your workday?
That's hard because it depends. I'll do a typical week roughly, because there are days that we don't have much going on. And when I say we don't have much going on, we're just like drafting days for me. And then there are other days where, like today, where it's just meeting after meeting after meeting. So typically I come to the office very early. I'm usually the first person here. I'm an early riser. I wake up, if I'm not out of bed by like 5:30, like it's a weird day for me.
Wow.
I generally get to the office between 6:30 and 7:15. So what I like to do at that time is sort of reply to my emails. And then as people slowly start coming in, I meet with whoever I need to meet with, because I am a new lawyer. I tend to reach out a lot for help, just to make sure that I'm not making any mistakes, holding myself accountable. Depending on the day of the week, then we have docket. Docket is it's a court proceeding essentially. So we go to court, except for with COVID, we do phone call court now. I prefer to go to the actual court building whenever it's an option, just because I like to see like people's expressions, and tone can be off sometimes on the phone. So as much as possible, I try to do face-to-face, but obviously I don't want to be risking health and safety of myself or others around me. So I'll do docket over the phone. And then that usually takes me probably to lunch. I'm a terrible for eating out. So I will either order food to the office or I will go out for food. And this is a habit I'm trying desperately to break. Then the afternoon is usually phone calls and drafting. I prefer, because I do get in really early, I prefer to leave around like 3 o'clock. And then depending on the evening or the week, I will come back later on at night. Usually I try to get back for 7 and then if possible work till 10 or 9, depending, like if I know a simple project can take me a couple hours, then cool. And if I know it's a big project, I'll save it for the morning. Just because I do try my best to have a work-life balance. Mm-hmm. And then there are weeks where I have the opportunity to go to rural dockets. So those dockets are in community. So for example, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I went to Blood Vein. So that day was completely different. I spent the whole day up there just doing child protection matters. And then for example, Monday, we are supposed to be going to Poplar River First Nation, where I'm from. But because of the COVID restrictions, we're just going to do that over the phone. So that actually frees up a lot of time for me because we don't have to fly there or any of that. And then depending on how crazy our deadlines are, I might work a Saturday. I never work Sundays. That's just something I've chosen for me because Sunday is the day I hang out with my family. And that's very important to me because if I'm not seeing them, they're kind of my why, like the reason why I do everything. And if I don't get to spend at least a day quality with them, like what is the point of all of this? Yeah. And that's kind of a typical week for me.
Okay, awesome. So we have another question from Andrea D. What were some of your favorite memories of your time at university for both of your degrees?
My favorite time. So for undergrad, I am still a member technically, I guess, of Alpha Delta Pi sorority, and that was definitely the highlight of my undergrad. I had the opportunity to meet people who I don't think I necessarily would have otherwise, and to see sort of the values we had in common and do activities that maybe my other friends wouldn't have tried. So for example, like we would do, just like pottery painting and like just hang out and watch Twilight repeatedly over and over again.
That's a classic at this point.
Honestly, I've yet to find someone who sincerely doesn't like it. And then in JD, for my JD, not in my JD, I think my best time, anytime I got to hang out, I have like 3 best friends in the world. Their names are Alyssa Bird, Danielle Morrison, and Kendall Dick. Anytime like we got to do any sort of projects together, the 4 of us, it was just like we were in our prime, we were in our heyday. Like that I think is when my best work came forward. So anytime I got to do things with them, for example, going to the Indigenous Bar Associations, the 3 of us mooted together in Halifax. So anytime I got to do things with that, I think would be the highlight of my JD.
Sound like some really amazing memories, just having that solidarity among all of you. So Ruth is asking, what do you see as the most urgent thing that needs to change in the child protection area?
The most urgent thing that needs to change? I would say communities need to take back the child welfare systems, and that's what's happening. For example, if you look at OCN, they're developing their own child welfare laws, and that's come to be made possible with Bill C-92, which came into effect this year. I'm sure COVID has slowed everything down because it's just been ruining everything. But that I would think is the most pressing issue, is that communities need to take back control and develop their own laws specific to them for their child welfare systems.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The UM Indigenous account is asking, what is your biggest motivator?
My biggest motivator? While I always jokingly say that it's my 2 dogs, I have 2 dash hounds. Their names are Reese and Ein, and they're a lot of love. They require a lot of attention. But sincerely, I think my biggest motivator would just be my siblings and my family and my community. I always say, like, if I had as much faith in myself as they do in me, I would be the world's most confident person, because they sincerely believe I can do anything. And I'm just like, oh God, guys, like, I don't know, that doesn't sound good. But yeah, they are sincerely my biggest motivator. And then my dogs come after that.
Yeah. Sounds like you got like a really amazing community of people surrounding you, which I guess in my experience has been really good too, to have.
Oh yeah, for sure. They understood. Like, I told them when I was going to law school, I was like, hey, like, the next 3 years are going to be really tough. Like, it's not going to be enjoyable for anyone, because I know it was just me in law school, but they also felt like there's residual stress that would just radiates off law students. And now that I'm done, they're like, yeah, they're so proud of me. They came this morning. I had my call to the bar over Zoom, and they were like texting me during it, like, oh, I'm so proud of you. I'm like, guys, I'm not supposed to be looking at my phone, but thank you.
It's family though.
Yeah, I know. And it was on silent, and it was on Zoom, and I was muted. I was just like, quietly, like, don't look down too often. Like,
Oh, that's really sweet. Well, actually, I have a question. What has been something that you've learned about yourself that kind of surprised you throughout your journey in becoming a lawyer?
I think the biggest surprises for me that I've learned about myself is things are only as stressful as I allow them to be. Like, I remember in undergrad just thinking, like, oh my God, like, I am so stressed. And then I got to law school, and I was like, oh my God, I am so stressed. And then I got to articling, I was like, this is stress. But now that I've been able to secure a position with Cochran Saxberg, I'm kind of like, you know what? I think it was just me making things a lot more stressful than they needed to be. And granted, like, things do cause stress, but I think I was allowing myself to be more worked up about them than I necessarily should have. So that's kind of been like my greatest takeaway in my whole educational journey to joining the workforce, where I'm just like, wow, like, undergrad me, I could go back and do undergrad right now. I'm pretty confident, like, no problem. But at the time, it just seemed like devastating. Like, every deadline was world ending, and I'm just like, that is just part of the journey. Because when I started, I was only 18, and now I'm 28. I'm like, yeah, like, just calm down.
You got this.
It's fine.
So speaking of stress, Ruth is asking, how do you manage that? Like, what do you have, any tactics, any mantras? What do you share with us?
The reason why I started waking up so early was because my biggest form of stress relief, I've realized, is going to the gym. And I know people hate hearing that, because people either love working out or they hate working out. But for me, and this is just for myself, I find it is like the biggest stress reliever, because something I always try to do is, like, I try to run till I'm burnt out, and then, like, I'm just too tired to do stress. So that is how it works for me. Other times is I'm a big list person. You might have seen on my Instagram, I went through my iCloud recently, and I found all my old lists of, like, to-do assignments, deadlines, personal things. And I was just like, wow, like, I'm still this person. My lists have become less intense, but it's still so funny, because that's how I've learned to cope with. Like, I can't show you it, but over here there's, like, you can see that one sort of, but there's sticky notes with, like, deadlines and things coming up, which I look at them like, okay, cool. It kind of puts things into perspective for me, for, like, okay, it is 10 things, but it's 10 things due over the next 2 weeks, which realistically works out to 1 task a day.
Yeah.
So that kind of is how I manage my stress, is working out and making lists.
Yeah, actually, just hearing you say all these things, it seems like there's a common thread in your experience where it's just like reframing things. right? So when feeling overwhelmed or something, you just kind of have to step back and take it all in. And that's like an amazing skill to have. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely think that's a skill I learned to develop over time and just growing up. And anytime I always, like, if I get overwhelmed, like at home, I'm just like, hey guys, I'm about to talk myself through this. Just kind of sit back and let it happen. And I'm sure my siblings have heard me do it tons of times where I just start listening, like, okay, I have a very busy day. I need to walk the dogs. Okay, I walk the dogs. Okay, I got to go to Superstore. At Superstore, I need to get milk, butter, eggs. Okay, and then when I get that, I'm going to stop at the bank on the way home. At the bank, I'm going to deposit the check. And like, I just list these things. And they're just like, okay, cool. Now go take your first step. Yeah. So it's definitely, I'm really big on trying to take a step back and look at the whole bigger picture. And I also try my best to think, if something doesn't happen today, what's going to have the least impact? So for example, do I need to do my banking today or not? If I don't do my banking today, what's the outcome? Is something going to bounce? Is nothing going to happen? If nothing's going to happen, okay, cool. Let's push it back till tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So always kind of reevaluating deadlines and things that need to happen. Otherwise, I know for myself that I will get burnt out, and in a career as demanding as law, especially working in child protection, that's something that I want to avoid at all costs, just because I have spent a lot of time and money to get here and I genuinely love what I do. So I don't want to have an early ending career because I couldn't learn how to manage myself.
I think that's very wise. It's good. So we have another question. I apologize if I mispronounce your name.
Bagwan, yes. Yeah.
Yay. Okay, good. Is asking, what is your favorite part of being a lawyer?
I mean, the robes are pretty cool. Just kidding. I got to wear robes for the first time today when I got my call to the bar officially. My favorite part, I think my favorite part, I kind of have two. Like, one's a professional one where I do like the ability that I do feel like I'm impacting and changing people's lives and helping. My second favorite part, I guess, and this is kind of vain, but I like it when people are like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm a lawyer. Like that, I just think, like, people's reactions, they're always just like, oh, and because like, for example, I recently applied for a credit card and they're like, and what do you do for a lawyer? I was like, a living. I was like, oh, I'm a lawyer. And they're like, really? I was like, I don't know how many people who you know that lie about being a lawyer, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So I think those are my favorite too, is like people's reactions and then genuinely feeling like I'm able to make a difference.
So we have another job-related question. As Soldier asks, who is your favorite coworker and why is it Stacy?
Well, right now it's Stacy because she lent me her robes for today.
Of course.
I may have missed that deadline to order in time. And otherwise, I don't have a favorite because picking favorites is mean. But also Danielle Morrison because she's my best friend.
Of course. Oh, Alyssa is asking, what are your go-to soundtracks for when you need motivation?
Oh, good question. I have playlists. Depending on what I'm doing, if I'm drafting, I really like to listen to piano covers of Taylor Swift.
That's so niche.
Yeah, very specific. If I am going to court, like to speak, for example, when I went to Blood Vein, I was listening to, I think it's called Feeling Myself on Spotify, that playlist. It was just a lot of like hype music, like get your ego boosted, because I was really nervous because I'd never done a community docket before, like a fly-in one. So I was like getting pumped on the plane, like, yeah, I got this. I know what I'm doing. What else? Yeah, I think those are kind of my two favorite go-to. And then sometimes I just like white noise music, I call it, like music I've been listening to kind of like since my emo phase, I guess, when I was in junior high. So I do listen to the emo soundtrack on Spotify a lot.
I was
as
waiting
well.
for that.
Yeah, it kind of plays in the background all the time. I'm like, oh, like we are singing a really sad song right now. Never mind. So I think those are my like 3 go-tos.
Awesome. Nikita asks, building off of Alyssa's question, what are some other self-care techniques that you prioritize?
A big one that I prioritize, and this could also be seen as vanity, is I make an effort to do my makeup. I know some people might not agree with that, but for me, like doing my makeup, like it starts with washing my face. And so for me, when I'm doing that in the morning, I do have it down to a pretty quick routine. Like I can do this face in roughly 20 minutes. But the reason why I do that is because I take a lot of time to reflect in the morning. And that's when I kind of have like my thoughts for the day, like what personal things I would like to accomplish. And then that's where I also remind myself what is okay if I don't accomplish today. So that kind of really just sets the tone for my day. And so I wake up early enough that I don't have to feel rushed. In the mornings, the off chance that I do sleep in and I do feel rushed doing my makeup, it kind of sets like a rush tone for my day. So this kind of doing it kind of reminds me to like slow down. It's okay to like take time for yourself, to make yourself present how you feel is like the best presentable version of you. So that's really important. And then the same thing at night is like when I'm washing off my makeup, I think about the tasks I did during that day, what I didn't accomplish, what I wish I would have done different. I'm really big on holding people accountable. So I hold myself accountable. So like, let's say like I made like an off comment that maybe I shouldn't have made, or I passed the blame to someone who maybe it was my fault, more my fault than their fault. I think about that. And then I think about, any actions I can sort of do to make that right, you know, so reaching out to people, and then I'll do that before bed. So those are 2 like big self-care things. And I know some people will say like, oh, doing makeup isn't like a form of self-care, but I think it is, because it helps me like to get in the zone to be the best version of me. So those are 2 of my big self-care things. And then always like making sure like I'm showered and I'm keeping up with like I do a smudge every day and things like that. Just talking to like my creator and making sure that I'm giving thanks for everything I have, because I do think I've had a lot of opportunities in my life that I'm extremely grateful for, and that have helped shape me to be the person I am and to put me in this position.
Awesome. So Andrea is asking, we're going to switch gears a bit here. What are some courses you would recommend to any students interested in studying law?
Any student interested in studying law, I always recommend that people take Intro to Native Studies 1 and 2, or the all-year course. I can't remember what the all-year course is called, but there's 2 3 credits you can take, or a 6 credit. They're essentially the same course, just cut in half. I always recommend that. That is sort of where my BA started. And I think it's important because it does do a pretty good job overall. Well, I took it with, I think I took it with Negon Sinclair, actually.
Oh,
and
wow.
He did an excellent job of sort of covering like broad topics and saying, you know what, like let's say treaty relations. Treaty relations can be a course in and of its own self. We're just touching the broad topics. So I always recommend that course kind of for anyone. It would be applicable to nursing, to education, really to any degree you would get, because it's important to know the history of the land that you're on. And this isn't like native land. So I would recommend that as well. And then for other courses, I think it would depend on what you wanted to study. So I always knew that when I decided to go into law, I wanted to work in child protection or labor. So I took a lot of family social science courses, and then I took a lot of labor study courses as well. So I was able to sort of have like specialization, but we don't do that in Canada. But that is where my interest was. I knew right away that if by taking undergrad courses, like I took a commerce course and I was like, I hate this. So I knew right away that I clearly would not be fitted for corporate commercial work, because I couldn't even do like the intro basic course. So I would recommend those courses. But I also kind of recommend people, like when my siblings ask me for course information, like just take one that you think sounds interesting. And if it's not interesting, don't study, like don't take another course in that subject. So
yeah, that's fair. It's good to try different things and see like how you respond and where you find your bliss. Is that the way?
Yeah, kind of like your passion.
Yeah.
You like something until you learn about it, and then you either fall in love with it or you realize it's not for you.
Yeah. Ruth is asking, do you have any tips for preparing for the LSAT that don't include caffeine? I'm just kidding.
I'm probably the worst person to ask. So the night before I wrote the June or May sitting, 2015. This is so embarrassing. Whatever, it is what it is. I was crying into a bowl of cookie dough, and my dad came and took the cookie dough away and made me cookies because I wasn't handling it well at all. So like one of my nervous tics is like I like peel my nails and I pull my hair. So like when I was studying for the LSAT, I started in, I think it was February, and like my hair just stopped growing. My nails were like complete garbage. So I'm not the person to ask for this. Like I was like caffeine, no sleep, taking tests every day, like the worst possible person to ask.
Okay, well, maybe I should ask a follow-up question for this. What, like, if you were to talk to that Raven now, what would you advise her to do?
Give yourself more time to study. Just because you can learn how to write it in a couple months doesn't mean you should. So for example, like let's say I had started studying in the fall, I think I would have been in a much better, I'd either would have been burnt out, which I already was when I started studying in February, or I would have been in a better headspace. So by the time I started, when it came really close to writing, I'd probably written like 10 practice exams, but because I wrote them in such close time, in such a small time frame, I don't think it was as beneficial as it could have been had I started even like in October the year prior.
Okay. So
more time is your friend. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, that's very true. So Karen is asking, what are a couple of your most memorable experiences that you've had on campus during your studies?
The most memorable. You know what? When I was in my final year of sorority, we have a formal every year. And because, again, I was young and I could bounce back quickly, I was a pretty regular at Starbucks to the point that the manager knew my name, knew my order, and was always like, Raven, how are you? How was your exam? So at my last sorority formal, my sorority sisters and I put on our gowns and went and did a photo shoot at the Starbucks in Dufault.
Oh, and my goodness.
Like, this was in like end of March, I think. So people were starting to studying, and then there's us like completely done up. There's photos somewhere on my Facebook if you look.
Yes.
And like we're in these gowns and we're in front of this closed Starbucks, like in the library, and everyone's just looking at us. I think that might have been my favorite thing I've ever done at the U of M.
What made it your favorite though?
I think just because I had spent so much time in that library during my undergrad, because I was like a third floor Defoe person. Like when you like hear a pencil drop, like everyone glares at you, that's kind of the environment I liked studying in. So I think it was just like fun to get dressed up. And my sorority sisters were always in the library too, because we all went on to do further degrees actually. Another went to law, and one went to education, and one's an occupational therapist. So we were all going into, after degrees that were also a lot of work. So I think just finally being able to like enjoy our time into faux, like being dressed up like in these ridiculous gowns and not taking ourselves serious in there for once. It was refreshing. I've never had that opportunity before because I've never been one of those people like, oh, let's go to Defoe and hang out. I'm like, we're going to Defoe. We're going to study. I've made a study schedule. We're going to follow it. Like, put your phones down. You can pick it up in 45 minutes. So it was nice to be able just to like exist there and hang out in a ridiculous gown. So I think that's why it was so enjoyable to me.
Yeah, it's just having fun without a goal or anything, which is
it was just like, let's go take photos. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's really sweet. Aw. Now I want to find those pictures.
I think they were like on a view only by me.
Okay. Oh, of course.
Right now, but I won't. If you can find them, cool.
I'll let you know.
God.
So, another question that I have, because I'm a current law student and I'm also Indigenous. What do you feel are the, I always hesitate to word this in the way that feels best, but essentially, like, what do you think being Indigenous has done in terms of being a law student, like for you and your experience? Because there's benefits, there's drawbacks, and I feel like people tend to focus on the, like, a deficit based outlook on things, which is real, but also I feel like it shortchanges us. So, like, holistically, what was that experience for you as an Indigenous woman being in law?
Holistically, I think being an Indigenous woman in law was a benefit. Because I am Indigenous, I was able to take I'm going to get this acronym wrong. It's the Program of Legal Studies for Native People. It's a program run out of the University of Saskatchewan. And because I took that program, that's actually where I met Danielle Morrison and Alyssa Bird. And I don't know that necessarily I think I would have eventually met them, but it definitely sped things up for us. So we took that program before we started law. And then because we had taken that program together, they actually put us in the same section. So for those of you who don't know, at Robson Hall, you kind of there's 3 sections and you spend the whole year with that, your whole first year with that section. So it's like AO1, AO2, and AO3. And because we had all taken the program together, they put us all in AO1. So that to me was extremely valuable because I'm sure you know that you spend so much time, you can spend so much time with your section. And if you don't like anyone in your section, it can make things harder. So because I was placed with them, I think it genuinely made it easier. And that was an opportunity that happened only because I taken the Saskatchewan program. And I only took that Saskatchewan program because I was Indigenous. There has been some aspects where I feel like people are careful, non-Indigenous folks are careful what they say around me. But I always try to, when people are hesitant, I'm like, no, just say it, because it's either you think it's problematic or it is problematic. And when I say problematic, I don't necessarily mean racist, but most of the time problematic does mean racist. So I think being Indigenous has sort of made others guarded around me, potentially. But that's their problem. That's not mine. If you were kind of afraid about being called out, then you know fundamentally that there's something wrong with holding that view or that belief. And that's more of a reflection of you and less of a reflection of me.
Yeah. And actually, I really like the way you've worded that, because I think there's something to be said about going into a space like law and feeling like, at least I felt this way, you're never going to measure up enough. But it's interesting to hear you flip that and affirm the fact that, like, the onus is on other people to check themselves. It's not like that emotional labor is not on us.
Yeah, I'm definitely big. Like, I've had professors ask me questions and things like that involve a lot of heavy emotional labor. And I'm just like, you can get a grant and you can hire me, but I'm not doing this work for free. It's exhausting. At the time, I was a law student. I knew the professor had a student. I was like, you could have chosen to hire an Indigenous student because you knew that this type of work is what you needed. This type of information was what you needed, and you chose not to. That's on you. That's not my fault at all. It has nothing to do with me. And I also remember that I actually have no obligations to anyone but myself. So doing emotional labor, if I do give it to someone, like, they should know that that relationship is important to me, because I don't give away my emotional labor for free, because I'm always checking myself, because I think the minute I start doing that people are going to expect it from me, and it's not an expectation I want to have. And I want people to know, people who are asking me, that it is not okay to expect free work from women, free work from people of color, free work from Indigenous people, just because you don't want to do the work yourself.
Yeah, and that's a powerful statement in this day and age. Absolutely.
So I say no all the time. It's like my favorite word.
No.
Are you going to pay me? Not really interested. So, and that is
all about boundaries.
It's also something that comes with age and confidence. I understand. I don't think 18-year-old me would have said no, but I don't think 18-year-old me would have been in a position to have ever been asked those questions anyways.
Right.
So it's definitely a skill set that takes time to develop, and eventually, and I'm also not a very emotional person. It could be harder for someone who is more in tune with, like, oh, I don't want to offend people, because I'm just like, at 28, I'm over worrying about offending people. I do myself to be the best version of me. And if I do offend someone, I hope that they call me out on it so that I can reflect on my actions and, my views. Like, I'm constantly reevaluating what I believe in and who I associate and things like that. I hope they do feel confident enough to call me out on any problematic behaviors of myself. But at the end of the day, like I said, like, my only obligation is to myself and to make sure that I'm okay. Because if I'm not okay, I'm not in a position to take care of the things that I hold of value. So if I'm not okay, I can't be there for my family. I can't be there for my dogs. I'm essentially useless. And that's just a burden on them that I don't want to create. So I make sure to keep myself in a position, the best position possible for me.
Awesome. So Thagon has another question.
Oh God. Okay.
Do you have any favorite classes at the U of M? So specifically a favorite class for law and a favorite random course.
I took a class with Karen Naylor. I believe she's a labor relation or labor dispute mediator in labor studies. I can't remember what course it was, but I remember being like, if I'm that type of mediator, I hope, like, I would be so lucky, because just watching her, she was so adamant and alive and passionate. And I was like, imagine having something, like, having your job carry so much value in your life that, like, that's how you feel about it. Like, that was what I wanted to be. And I wish I could remember what course it was, because it was like labor studies 2 or something. Like, it was not a high level course, but just watching her teach, I was like, damn, like, she is passionate, and that is what I want in my life. And then my favorite law course, I don't know if I had a favorite one. I liked doing the moots. I did the Kewaskum moot. I did it twice, technically. One year I did it as a researcher, and the other year I did it as a mooter. For those of you who don't know, a moot is like a mock trial, like a fake trial. So they give you a set of fact patterns and then a whole backstory, and you kind of have to come up for an argument with it and kind of go and, like, do a whole trial. But because with the Kewaskum moot is the Indigenous moot, so it's actually negotiations based. So instead of, like, going to argue, you were like, okay, like, let's try our best to reach a resolution. I think that might have been my favorite experience, because I believe in our year we were the only group to reach a resolution, because well, Danielle and I did it together, and we were just like, hey, like, I want to hear everyone's views. So we ended up giving everyone like time to talk and like rebuttal and things like that. And apparently that's not what the other groups did. And I think it just, for me, it was kind of a confidence boost, and like in the approach I'm using works, because I do like to hear the other side. And even if I don't agree with it, I still think people have the right to have their voice heard. So I think that course was probably my favorite, because it reiterated that the style that I was using was working, or was working better than the other styles, at least, which was just arguments from what I heard.
Cool. I'm gonna check out this list of questions here. I think something that would be important to ask is like, what did you do after you graduated from law? Like, what were the following couple of weeks? How did you approach life? Because that's a huge milestone. It's a big change.
So after I finished law, what did I do? I slept. I definitely slept because it was after exams. And then I think I just hung out with my family for a week. And then we had the grad powwow. And then I went to Vietnam for 4 or 5 weeks. And then I immediately jumped straight into work. I didn't want to have too much time off, because that's when I find like I get myself in trouble. And I don't mean like legal troubles. I get ideas like, yo, like, let's clean out the basement. Let's reorganize. Let's paint the living room. And like, I hate doing all sorts like that kind of work. But I'm always like, anytime I have like a couple weeks off, I'm like, this wall could be purple. I don't like the yellow anymore. So I didn't want to give myself too much time off for that reason. So I took a week off. I went to the grad powwow. I went to Vietnam. I think I had like 2 days to recover, and then I went to work.
Wow.
So I didn't want time to get bored, because that's when bad ideas happen.
Well, bad.
Well, I don't need home renos right now. Like, my house is perfectly fine.
Oh man, I didn't know you went to Vietnam. That's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't really post about it because I just wanted to like be away from my phone and like be in the moment. So I think I probably have like 100 pictures from the whole time I was there, but it was beautiful. I would recommend it.
Noted. So I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So if folks in the chat have any questions they want to ask, feel free. Otherwise, I have 0 issue asking my own questions because I have thousands. I mean,
okay. Oh, I can see the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not very Zoom savvy.
That's all right. It's only relatively new that we've started using this. Oh, Ruth is asking, what happened at your ceremony today? And that's actually a question I wanted to ask too.
Okay, so today was the call to the bar. Usually, traditionally, it's held in June, and it's a big mass sitting. So anyone who's sort of articled and met the requirements from the Law Society go to the Centennial Concert Hall and have a whole court proceeding. Obviously, we couldn't do that this year because of COVID. So it was a little different. They had 3 seatings today. It's an actual court proceeding. So we had to robe up. That's where we put on, you can see them right there. Those are our court robes. And the Chief Justice is there, and he does a little talking piece, talks about how important it is, this profession, making sure that we stay ethical and upright and outstanding citizens. And then you get called, and what your call is, usually like if it's at the concert hall, like you walk on stage, you bow to the Chief Justice, and then you walk across and you get, they're called your barrister and solicitor. They're like 2 certificates. And then after everyone does that, you take an oath together. So technically you do an oath to the Queen and then your solicitor's oath and your barrister's oath. I didn't do the oath to the Queen for obvious reasons. But we got to do it over Zoom. So it was a little different because we did it 5 people at a time instead of the like 95 people that you would normally have. And then there's an award. It's called the Israel Montague Award, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's a big prestigious award, and it actually, the value they give it actually starts from like day one at law school all the way to you're done articling. And not a lot of people know about it. And this year it went to Kendall Dick, who is my best friend, and she's a Métis baddie, and I'm so proud of her. So I just wanted to like put that little plug in there. So then they give that award, and you actually don't know who it is until the day, like even the winner doesn't know. So today they actually, at 10 a.m., they emailed us a video link, and I'm just like, okay, whatever, I'll watch it. I skipped to the end, and then they announced it was Dell, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. So I called her, and she actually had, the only reason she knew she had won is because someone texted her, and she looked at her Apple Watch while she was in the shower.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh my God, I won. And then I called her and she's like, I haven't even seen the video yet. So I guess that's kind of a benefit of it being over Zoom. And then that was it.
And here you are.
Zoom, yeah. Usually afterwards, if it was at the Centennial Concert Hall, you would sign the rolls. But again, because of COVID, we can't have people like touching the same pencil. So you actually have to book an appointment down at the Law Society. And you can bring 3 people with you. I haven't done that yet for no real reason, actually. I just haven't scheduled it. But it is, even over Zoom today, it was cute because like I said, my family was in our group chat blowing up. It would have been cuter if we could have done it in person and like had cute little matching skirts and things like that. But it's not possible in this reality, and that's okay for me. So it was everything that it should have been. So
yeah, that's an awesome way to look at it. So I know we ran a little bit late starting, so we have one last question from Danielle, actually.
Ooh, okay.
And I think it's a really important one, so I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
What do you think our ancestors and those who have passed on before us would say to you today, and what would you share for the next generation? No pressure.
Wow, Danielle Morrison. I think they would be proud. The fact that there have been so many, there have been so many genocides on Indigenous people and so many removals and forced removals and on us as a people, and the fact that like we're still here. And the fact that even to this day, there is racism is very prominent in the justice system, that we still managed to make it. Like, I think that my ancestors would be very proud of me. I know there are some elders who have said, you know, Indigenous people shouldn't become doctors, they shouldn't become lawyers because it's a colonial system. But the only way, in my opinion, and this is a view for myself, I think the only way that I can help change a colonial system is being in the system. I'm not my sister Kakige. My sister Kakige is always out on the front lines. She's always protesting and things like that. And I just don't have that sort of energy within me as a person. And she does. But so I don't think that would be the most effective way for myself to create change. I think it would be being in the system is how I can change it from outside with inside without, from inside to without. And she starts from out within. So I think they would be proud of me. And then to the next generation, I hope it's not as hard for them. Yeah. And if it is hard, I hope they just realize that you can persevere, that it's hard, but it is worth it. Well, I think it's worth it. I'm sure some people would disagree. But as long as you keep striving to be your best self, not even to be like the best person in the class or the best person, like best lawyer out there, just to know that you put your heart and soul into everything that you do, and you do it from a good place with good morals guiding you, it's hard to go wrong when you start in a good way. So I would just tell them that, make sure that your intentions are good. Like, I didn't come into law to make $1 million. Like, I was okay with working at legal aid for the rest of my life if I had to. So I would just tell the next generation, it's hard, but you're making it easier for the next group.
Mm-hmm. Well, merci. Thank you so much, Raven.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Sitting with you and chatting has been such a gift, and hearing your amazing responses is just, yeah, it's so lovely. And I think everyone here is very grateful that we got to hear you speak.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to hand things over to Karen Richards, the event coordinator, to just do some closing remarks for us today.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Indigenous Living Library event. This has been a great session. I would like to thank you, Raven, very much for agreeing to talk with us today. On behalf of Indigenous Achievement, we are gifting you this beautiful U of M beaded
God,
pen.
Thank you.
It was made by a local artist. Her name is Robin Booley.
Okay.
And also a book. I don't know if you can see that. Sorry.
Oh,
The Northwest is our mother, and a copy of the magazine Brer Patch, the land back issue. And I also want to thank you, Jacqueline, for doing such a wonderful job at interviewing. And we also have a U of M bookstore gift card for you, and I'll mail that out to you. And just thank you both. And I'll turn it over to Ruth now. She has a few words.
Thank you so much to both of you. This has been just a joy to listen to. Raven, you're hilarious and so deep at the same time. It's just been fun. And Jacqueline, I just love your questions and your follow-up questions. Yeah, and thank you for everyone who joined us and the questions in the chat. I just want to let everyone know that this is one of the events that we host over the year. We also do an Indigenous Scholars Speaker Series. So I just wanted to let everyone know that the next one is, and I pulled it up on my phone so I got the date correct, is on October 29th at noon, and it's Brian Rice. And because we're in a virtual world, we will be online. And that's in our events calendar. And yeah, it's just so exciting to see all of you out in the world doing such amazing things. And I just can't wait to keep connecting with our Indigenous alumni and Indigenous students doing amazing things. So thank you so much. And yeah, everyone have a great weekend, a great safe weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.